Well, this is Happy False Prophet Day. It's October 22nd of 2024. It's the 180th anniversary of the false prophecy of William Miller predicting the physical return of Christ, October 22nd, 1844, which did not happen. And coincidentally, this is going to be the founding of what's going to be called the Seventh-day Adventist Church, who has as its foundation the false prophecy of William Miller. By the way, that false prophecy is recorded here in this book. I have an original 1838 edition where that is recorded here. So here we go. Like I said, happy anniversary, Seventh-day Adventist. So you shouldn't be calling it a happy anniversary, because the foundation of your church, again, is a false prophet and a false prophecy. Now, this false prophecy of William Miller, actually, and kind of leading up to your church, resulted in the Hiram Edson vision. Hiram Edson, probably staying up all night in his ascension robe and cold on the roof, got a vision walking through a cornfield, and it's rumored he was walking through this cornfield so he didn't have to see a bunch of other people who were ridiculing the crazy Second-day Adventist and their false prophecy. Then he gets a vision. I know what 1844 really means. And then that's followed by a vision by, Ellen White says, yes, Hiram Edson, you're right, and wazza bing, and you get the doctrine of the investigative judgment. The investigative judgment, the founding of Adventism, is nothing more than two visions. One by Hiram Edson, followed by another vision by Ellen White. There is absolutely no Bible study. This has already been discussed in Defeating Adventism number 47. Go look at it here. There's the receipts. There's the evidence. So for this video, which is going to be a reoccurring event, I wanted to do this last year. Just time got away from me. I thought, I am going to look at the very first great controversy. Many people believe the 1884 edition or the 1888 edition is the actual first great controversy, but no. This is the first edition. This was published in 1858. By the way, because it's an original book, this is a very, very, very rare book. And should you find one, and you're lucky enough to get it, if you're just lucky enough to get it, it can be very expensive. I am going to quote from this book. Now, I'm going to show graphics that are from a modern PDF file, because I had this book, as you can probably tell, I had it restored. I took it to my bookbinders, had this book restored. I do not want to open it up for photographs. So every quote you see is from a modern PDF version, which I then went here to make sure that it was actually accurate. Because if the White Estate gets their hands on it, they start changing stuff. As you've already seen in the 6 o'clock Sabbath vision, where they start changing Ellen White's visions. So I check them all for accuracy. Now, Ellen White taught in here, she got a whole chapter on William Miller, in here, that God personally called and directed William Miller. Adventists, let that sink in. God called and directed William Miller. That means God what? He's behind the 1844 failed prophecy. But Ellen White said that in a vision. We're going to see it. By the way, I'm often told by Adventists, Ellen White goes in vision and all she does is just point to the Bible. That's all Ellen White does. I got a Bible right here handy, and Ellen White, she goes in vision and she's just pointing you to the Bible. Okay, fine, fair enough. Where in the Bible, because this vision, she's saying that God is sending angels to William Miller, pointing them, to the prophecies. Where in the Bible does it say that? So that's, when you say that, Seventh-day Adventist, you're wrong. Because we got a vision here, it doesn't point anybody to the Bible. As a matter of fact, it points you away from the Bible, as you're going to see. No, maybe it does. Ellen White's vision that God is behind the failed prophecy of William Miller point to the Bible? Oh, I know the answer, and the answer is look here. Yes, it is. Here's where Ellen White points to the Bible. She points to herself, because false prophets also rose among the people, like Ellen White, just as there will be false teachers among you, like Ellen White, who bring in destructive heresies, like Ellen White. We are going to start here. We're going to go to page, in the original, this is on page 128. Let's look at this vision of Ellen White here. And she says what? I saw that God sent his angel to move upon the heart of a farmer who had not believed the Bible and led him to search the prophecy. So God's behind this. Angels of God, plural, repeatedly visited that William Miller is that chosen one. And they guided his mind and opened his understanding to prophecies which had ever been dark to God's people. If William Miller was directed by God and his angels, would God direct William Miller to truth or to error? Ellen White, hey, she said in here on page 128, God directed him. So does God direct people to error, or does God direct them to truth? We read in this quote, and I'm quoting again, God guided his mind and opened his understanding to the prophecies which had evermore been dark to the world. So according to Ellen White and her crazy vision, God directed William Miller to secret Bible messages that have never before been discovered. Does the Bible have secret messages that through visions of Ellen White that we can understand how God is giving us these secret visions? That's called Gnosticism, by the way. So this vision of Ellen White that you just read, she just placed the approval and the stamp of God on this failed prophecy, 1843, 1844, of William Miller. What Adventist who is alive today is going to say that God was, well, that's what Ellen White's here, who's going to say that God was behind the false prophecy of William Miller and the physical return of Christ in 1844? What Adventist today alive is going to say that? I don't know. But this Adventist, your Spirit of Prophecy, sure did on page 128 here. So I challenge you, Adventists. Is this vision you just read in here on page 128, is it from God or is it from, well, Satan? Is it truth or is it error? Because if you say it's truth, then you're saying God put his stamp of approval on the 1844 false vision. If you say it's error, then Ellen White is giving false visions. What do you want to choose, Adventist? Well, her vision continues, and let's read here. As John the Baptist heralded the first advent of Jesus and prepared the way for his coming, so also William Miller and those who joined with him proclaimed the second advent of the Son of God. Really? The second advent of the Son of God. Really? Well, how did that work out, by the way? Because we all know what William Miller said. I know what he said. I got his book. I got his book here. It's Evidence on the Scripture History and the Second Coming of Christ, published in 1838. In 1838, he's telling us what's going to happen in 1843, or 1844, he says. Well, how did that work out for you? Didn't we just read that Ellen White said that William Miller was guided by God? Well, how did that work out for you, Adventist? William Miller guided by God. Y'all sitting on the rooftops with your ascension robes on, waiting for the day that never came. And I can just hear some of you saying right now, there's no such thing as ascension robes. I did a whole video proving using United States newspapers over many years, Adventists wore these silly, stupid ascension robes. I got the evidence. So, Ellen White wants us to be sure that we know God was completely behind this false prophecy. Here's the last quote I'm going to show from this book right here. God led the mind of William Miller into prophecies and gave him great light on the book of Revelation. God led William Miller? I got to say it again. Really, God led William Miller? Because here's what God supposedly did by putting that he's going to physically return in 1843 or 1844. You know what we just said? It's a false prophecy. Ellen White just attributed this false prophecy of William Miller and this supposed vision that she got, which is supposed to be from God, all on God, as if God did this. So Adventists, you celebrate October 2nd, 1844, and you use a euphemistic term, and you call it's the Great Disappointment. No, it's the Great False Prophecy. Remember what Ellen White said. Your visionary prophet in vision said God guided William Miller. William Miller promoted and wrote a false prophecy. He predicted something was going to happen and it didn't, and that's what we call a false prophecy. The SDA Church is founded, its very foundation is this false prophecy of William Miller that you like to call a great disappointment. No, it's a false prophecy. And your church is false. So, well, happy 180th anniversary.